Okay, so I think I'm ready. So welcome to our session titled AI for Neuromarketing. The lecture material was prepared and curated by me and Dr. Vangelis Oikonomou, who is a postdoctoral research associate in the Center of Research and Technology Hellas. I will be your main presenter of this session, and Dimitris Papaioannou is our host. Okay, so the course objective is to equip you with the fundamental knowledge and skills so that you can be able to follow the most recent research in the neuromarketing domain, while it can also serve as a first step for you to consider conducting your own research in this domain. To this end, it overviews and describes basic neuromarketing definitions, like neuromarketing sensors, tools, and applications. In the next presentation, we perform a deeper dive into the technicalities of eye tracking technology and EEG technology in dedicated presentations. And finally, this course presents some key insights from recent research in the neuromarketing domain, while proposing future research pathways. At the end of the presentations, we have allocated some time for interactive discussion, answering to live audience questions and questions posted on the chat. So regarding me, I'm currently working at the Artificial Intelligence and Information Analysis Lab at the Aristotle University of Thessaloniki. My marketing experience stems from my former experience at the University of Antwerp, Belgium, where I have been a Marie Curie postdoctoral fellow. I'm an expert in eye tracking technology, having conducted research in the domain, producing 5 papers relevant to eye tracking technology and neuromarketing. And I have been the supervisor of 3 master theses in this domain. My background is on machine learning, image processing, and pattern recognition, where I have served as a research and teaching assistant for the past 10 years, where I have co-authored more than 50 papers in high-impact journals and international conferences of the field. So this session, this is how it better aligns with the domain of AI, recent trends, and etc. My co-organizer, Dr. Vangelis Oikonomou, he is not able to be here to present in person. Dr. Oikonomou has served as a visiting assistant professor in Technological Education Institutes of Ionian Islands and Epirus. He is a co-author of more than 50 journal papers and supervisor of more than 5 theses. Having a signal processing background, his current research interests span across the areas of machine learning, Bayesian reasoning, data analysis, biomedical signal and image analysis, statistical image processing, and medical imaging. He is an expert of EEG technology, and he has conducted marketing experiments, collecting, processing, and analyzing data from EEG sensors. So he prepared all the parts that are related to the EEG of this course. So the lecture is structured as follows. First, we are discussing about the fundamentals of neuromarketing, what is neuromarketing about, and we'll be discussing about cognitive and affective states, sensors, and applications. Next, we are going to perform a deep dive into eye tracking technology, covering legacy and deep learning-based techniques, and then we are going to have our coffee break. After the coffee break, I'm going to present you the EEG and neuromarketing slides that were prepared by Vangelis Oikonomou, performing a deep technical dive into EEG technology. And finally, we are going to allocate some time for our interactive discussion session, where I'll be answering live questions from the audience and from the remote participants. So without further ado, let's begin with the core part of the session. So, what is neuromarketing? we'll be describing basic neuromarketing principles, definitions related to cognitive and affective states, like what is attention, what is perception, decision-making, and also how do we define emotions. Then we will overview some of the most widely employed neuromarketing sensors, namely EEG, fMRI, eye tracking, galvanic skin response. And then we will showcase some neuromarketing applications and some key insights extracted from recent research. So what's neuromarketing? Neuromarketing is an interdisciplinary field that brings together neuroscience, psychology, and marketing to better understand how computers make decisions, how consumers make decisions. I'm sorry, I'm from an AI background. In other words, neuromarketing includes the tools and technologies that help us observe how consumers react at a non-conscious level. Several biometric tools are commonly used in this field, namely electroencephalography, functional magnetic resonance imaging. So we will discuss in more detail on this in the following slides. And together, data captured from the sensors, including the analysis of those data, provides us deeper insights on cognitive and affective states based on sensors and some marketing stimuli. So neuroscience signals are typically captured in conjunction to some marketing stimuli. Marketing stimuli may be, it is usually multimodal. It could include images like package designs or website UIs, logos, videos like video advertisements, text like some branding messages, or sound. And AI for neuromarketing involves all the AI techniques that can be applied for analyzing neuromarketing signals and marketing stimuli. So we analyze at both ends, both the stimuli and the sensor data. So the role of machine learning and AI in neuromarketing. There are several roles. One of them is to classify brain signals, to do emotion detection, to process EEG data. When I mean process, I might mean pre-processing. Deep learning is also used for natural language processing, analyzing consumer feedback, for instance, and computer vision methods for analyzing facial expressions, eye movements. And AI allows real-time, personalized, and scalable neuromarketing insights. So to better understand what we're trying to do, we need to have an understanding of what are cognitive and affective states. So the main goal is to extract some measures that can proxy human cognitive and affective states related to some specific marketing stimuli. Of course, it is absolutely impossible to capture such states simply by using sensors and machine learning technology, or even questionnaires. Nevertheless, with proper experimental design, the right configuration of the sensors, and by asking the right questions to participants, we effectively extract meaningful measures that are to some extent correlated with the actual affective and cognitive states of humans. In some cases, they are correlated a lot, like eye tracking data are correlated a lot with attention. But in others, it doesn't. But this is what research is about. They're trying to find some optimal processing techniques and better interpretations of the data to better understand those cognitive and affective states. So when we are referring to cognitive states, what exactly do we refer to? This relates to the thinking and information processing aspects of the mind. So attention means how much focus a consumer allocates to an ad, product, or specific elements within them. Are they actually looking at the brand logo? So this state is called attention. Then we have memory. How well is information about a brand or product stored and recalled from memory? Do consumers remember an advertisement they saw a week earlier? Then we have the cognitive load. The cognitive load is a state where we are fed with a lot of information and we cannot really process the messages, some marketing messages, for instance. So we want to be able to detect cognitive load in consumers. So, for instance, as the time passes now in our presentation, your cognitive load increases, and your attention span reduces, and this is absolutely normal. Okay. Then we have perception. Perception is the interpretation of the marketing signal. Then we have attitude. Attitude is what marketing is trying to do in essence. So you want to shift the attitude of potential consumers towards a brand, because if someone thinks that he is very connected to some brand, he is more likely to buy some products or service from this brand. And then finally, we have the decision-making process, which the actual state of reaching to the purchase decision or leaving our cart empty at the end, or that's called abandonment. So attention is important. Perhaps attention is one of the most well-studied cognitive states. As you can imagine, if an advertisement is not noticed, then marketing cannot succeed. Measuring attention can have important applications in packaging design, UI design, product placement, and it is usually measured using eye tracking technology and other digital metrics like click-through rates, screen time. Then we have memory. For a brand or product to be considered, it must be remembered. Memory ensures brand recall at decision points and builds long-term brand recognition and awareness. It is important to measure memory proxies for logo creation, slogan creation, and also provide consistent messages so they can be remembered easier. Like, for example, if you remember if I tell you the name of Nike brand, you will remember the phrase "just do it," just because it's consistently repeated and repeated and repeated for so many years. So they do that specifically to trigger our memory aspect. Memory can be proxied by brand recall tests, either aided, like, do you remember brand X, or unaided, which brands do you remember? This is how it is measured. And it can also be proxied using EEG technology if we have increased theta waves or activation of the hippocampus and prefrontal cortex. And indirectly by eye tracking, it has been proved that if we have long fixation durations and increased pupil dilation, this is also related to memory. Then we have cognitive load. Excessive mental effort leads to frustration and disengagement. Marketeers target on minimizing efforts for consumers to understand and act. Understanding cognitive load can improve user experience and reduce abandonment. So abandonment might be if you go to a website to buy a product and then you leave your shopping cart, and if the procedure is too hard to enter your card and etc. to pay, then this is called abandonment. So marketers try to measure that and minimize the procedures from, like if you remember the Amazon click and pay, so it's one-click procedure. This is why they do it, to minimize the cognitive load. And I think it is patented also. So this is how important it is. Cognitive load can be proxied by sensors, using eye tracking, like increased pupil dilation is in many cases related to cognitive load. EEG, of course, changes in some frequencies, and the electrodermal activity with the GSR sensors is also very useful. Another way to be measured is using behavioral metrics, like how much time do you take to complete a specific task, the error rates, clicks to goal. So let's see if we have time to describe you one experiment I was not exactly part of, but I heard that we were doing in the marketing research department. So they were trying to measure if we are more prone to make healthy food choices over unhealthy food choices, like chocolate snacks versus fruits. Okay. And they were trying to estimate what is the effect of cognitive load in this respect. So there was, they set up 3 experimental settings. So in a table, they tried to put the healthy snacks in one setting very close to the people. So when they went to break, if they wanted to try the first available snack, it would be fruits. So they had to do increased effort to catch the chocolates because they were further behind. Then they did the exact opposite in setting 2. And then in setting 3, they put everything together. And for all experiments to further stimulate the cognitive load, there was some person that was speaking to them, so engaging with them. So while someone was trying to grab some snack, there would be another person talking to them. So half of them were bombarded with, let's say, this extra task of being social, and the other half, they were not. So they were free to do their free choice, to practice their free choice, let's say. So, and they estimated that it turns out that the cognitive load affects around 20% what choices you will be making. And so they used 100 participants. So if you want to promote, let's say, fruit, you can stimulate this cognitive load and try to sell the fruit by putting them closer and by talking to people. This helps, because if someone is talking to you, you are not going to reach to the further location. This is what cognitive load is about. Okay, then we have a perception. Marketing message should be correctly interpreted. So perception has application in brand storytelling, trying to craft narratives to shape desired perceptions. Sensory marketing, where you can use scent, sound, and touch to evoke specific product perceptions. And pricing and naming, communicating value and quality, like our company is sustainable, and etc. The classic things we listen in ads. Perception can be mostly measured using interviews. However, important insights can also be extracted by neuromarketing sensors, like changes in pupil size, changes in eye tracking, EEG event analysis, activations at sensory and prefrontal cortices of fMRI, and etc. Then we have the attitude. The goal of marketing is essentially to shape attitude. Consumers choose brands that they have a favorable predisposition towards. Attitude is important because it is a very good predictor of behavior. Attitude drives purchase and repeat buying. It guides choice, influences brand preference, and fosters loyalty, building long-term customer commitment. So one of the ways to build attitude is by providing consistent positive messaging and experiences, campaigns to create favorable associations, product development, and it can be measured both with surveys, like rating scales, do you like this brand, do you don't like this brand, etc. And sensors can also give some insights. The final cognitive state is decision making. The final cognitive stage of the one that we are covering. Okay, there's an infinite amount, let's say, of cognitive and affective states, but this is, let's say, the most widely used terms in neuromarketing. So decision making is related to it links directly to sales. It guides consumers through choices, and it can be measured by perhaps the most objective way, because they are measuring actually sales. Okay. Then, besides cognitive states, we also have the affective states. So one of the affective states that we'll be covering today is arousal, valence, and emotions. So arousal means how physiologically activated or intense is a consumer's emotional response to some stimuli. Is, let's say, his heart start racing. Then we have valence. Valence could mean how the pleasantness or unpleasantness of consumer emotional experience. Does this product evoke feelings of joy or frustration? Then we have distinct emotions, which are distinct feeling states that combine arousal and valence with some unique qualities, like can we feel excitement, surprise? So for a brand to capture attention, it needs optimal physiological intensity. So if you want to capture the attention of someone, you also need to evoke some feelings and those some emotions. And arousal is the exact emotion that is correlated to attention. High arousal draws focus. Intense emotions are better and easier to remember. And it keeps consumers involved within content. So this is why you see in many advertisements types of messages that are related to some stories. They have dogs very commonly. They have, they want to create some positive relationship with you. They are stimulating the arousal. And so how arousal can be measured? One is with galvanic skin response sensors. It is a direct measure of skin conductance. Then we have pupil dilation from eye tracking sensors, from heart rate, or from EEG sensors, where we have increased beta or gamma activation from fMRI, and from self-reports, of course. Then we have valence. So positive valence encourages engagement and purchase. So applications that are taking valence into account include brand storytelling, where they have narratives evoking joy, warmth, security, smiling faces, uplifting music. Then it also some elements in products like a soft advertisement is always, let's say, it comes together with some relaxing music. It's not like rock music with a sofa. So, or if you have a car advertisement, then it's usually something energetic. It's not like a relaxing car. So this is what the brands are trying to do. And then we have specific emotions that drive the evocation of specific emotions, drives distinct behaviors like fear and anger. So let's say you have an advertisement of trying from a brand that is not from a company, but from a non-profit organization that wants you to give money to, let's say, to poor kids. So they will give you some photographs of and videos of poor kids that they don't have enough food to eat, and this evokes negative emotions, and it is done specifically for this reason. So branding is not only for companies, it's also for enterprises and even for government. And so marketing is for everyone. So some considerations now that we covered the cognitive and affective states is that cognitive and affective states are way more than the ones we described in these slides. Almost all of them are statistically associated between each other. Some of them have a positive or negative correlation, but this statistical association does not necessarily relate to causal relationships. And when you repeatedly get the same result, as a researcher, you might be confused about that. Like in many experiments, memory is always associated with attention, but this is just an experiment. It's we don't know for sure if all those states are really that much associated. Of course, another aspect is that the relationships are commonly assumed as linear. So at the end of the day, you have a model with different states and you try to predict one state from another. But those relationships, if you fit a linear model, you will get some number, but it doesn't mean that those relationships are linear. Furthermore, the cognitive and affective states are highly dynamic. So they change. They might change before we measure them, after we measure them, and they could change in a split of a second, especially emotions. So neuromarketing sensors can merely extract signals. What extracts the variables and measures that can be used to probe statistically association measures is signal processing. And now we'll move on to the most widely used neuromarketing sensors. So in the picture on the right, you see two commercial products that have a very good reputation in eye tracking. So the main output of eye tracking is fixations, which means that someone is looking to one specific point, and saccades. Saccades is when you are not looking to one specific point, but your eyes are moving. So those are the two main categories of outputs. Eye tracking is used to evaluate ad effectiveness, website usability, evaluation of different packaging designs, and evaluation of shelf placement So more details about eye tracking will be in the next presentation. We will do a deeper dive of how this technology works and what exactly are the inputs and outputs and what are the methods used. Then we also have the electroencephalogram, which measures electrical conductance across electrode placements, and it will also be detailed more in the presentation after the break. So we're not going to discuss more many things about fMRI because we cannot cover everything, of course, but the general idea is that fMRI measures changes in blood oxygenation. This is called the Bolt signal, and it allows researchers to map brain region activation during some specific task or thoughts during sensory experiments. Another commonly used sensor in marketing experiments is galvanic skin response sensors. Those sensors measure, so from the pictures you see, it's the one in the middle, the B. GSR sensor is a very high sensitive sensor. It measures actually the electrical conductance of the skin, and that means the glands that produce sweat. So when you are becoming more, let's say, you have more arousal, typically you see a spike in the signal. And this is, you can get this information in a very high frequency, like 100 Hz or more. GSR sensor cannot extract what emotion is being felt. It could be excitement, it could be fear, but it tells you that the strength of the intensity of this emotional response. So now let's dive into some neuromarketing research. So one study that was carried out in the University of Antwerp is that they used eye tracking to generate personalized advertisements for job recruitment. Okay, so what they wanted to measure was, you see an advertisement, this is the best job for you, and it calls your name, or this is a job for neuromarketing research. Okay. So that's the difference. So they will try to see what's the difference between those two categories. So the participants, it turned out that the participants fixate on the personalized advertisement more frequently, they view it longer. However, they don't notice it faster or return to it more frequently. So when I read all those lines, it comes to specific eye tracking metrics. And so one is, let's say, see it more frequently, it means the number of fixations in one specific area of interest. So we'll talk about this in the next presentation. But when you read those lines, the message that I'm going to pass you now is that it doesn't necessarily mean the interpretation is something that is, let's say, friendly to our minds to understand, but it's not exactly what the sensors are doing, and it's not exactly what the processing output is. It's only a proxy to those sentences. Okay, so we'll talk about it in the next presentation. So another important finding is that enhanced visual attention was correlated to reduced perceived intrusiveness. So while someone would think the opposite, that if my name is used in an advertisement, probably I could feel that this is intrusive. But contrary to what someone might expect, the results show the exact opposite. Because if an advertisement is well tailored to you, you don't even feel intruded. You feel like the other person knows you. So it's this nuance is very important uh, for for many companies, let's say, working in this direction. So another type of research is when you combine multiple neuromarketing sensors. So this paper conducted an EEG plus eye tracking study comparing a TripAdvisor page, including an ad on the bottom or not including it. And they found that the presence of the ad attracts some additional attention, but it does not ignite any neural stimuli. This phenomenon is called banner blindness in marketing, where you always expect to see an advertisement at the end of the page. So since there are more visual elements, yes, you look at them, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you remember them or process them. And another study was eye tracking and GSR, trying to measure consumer responses to stimuli in footwear stores. So when you walk into some food store, what are the positions that you spend more time, and what are the products that you look the most? So they found that there are significant differences in attention depending on where the products are being placed. And in these specific stores, they had many products very close to the cashier, and they found that the participants spend 35% of their time close to the cashier. So such metrics are useful not only to showcase if the product placement is good, but also how much time like in a big consumer store, you might take a lot of time just to pay for the product because the service is too slow. So another study explored the neurophysiological mechanism behind brand personality and consumer attraction. And it revealed that physiological responses measured by EEG and GSR often differ from self-reported preferences. So another nice topic was about taboo advertising. So do you know what taboo advertising means? So it means that you include some thematic areas that are, let's say, controversial, like including nudity in the advertisement or including violence. So typically you see in fragrance advertisements that they have some sexual elements, or in so this topic is called in scientific terms taboo advertising. So they tried to use sensors to measure what is the effect of doing a normal advertisement, let's say, versus a taboo advertisement, and they found that taboo positively affects recall and attention. And attention to brand identifying information also influences recall. So the results of this research was that taboo reduces time to first fixation, increases fixation count, both for product images and for brand logos. And to conclude these presentations, we will also include some limitations. So this is the growth of the domain in the next 10 years. So as you have seen, 20 years ago, there were only maybe 5 papers per year published, and now there are more than 100 per year. And also the market size of the neuromarketing domain has increased dramatically, especially the neuromarketing. Now it's more than $4 billion dollars market. So one of the problems in neuromarketing research is that they forget that devices and sensors do not directly measure the cognitive and affective states. They only measure some variables. And so this creates a narrative that neuromarketing can measure actually cognitive and affective states, which is not the case. And so this way, the capabilities of those sensors are, we could say that they are overestimated. Another problem is that there is a lack of widely accepted conventions across studies. And of course, there's because neuromarketing signals are considered personal or whatever, they are not shared very commonly with the community. So it's whatever one researcher says, and the others are supposed to believe that. Other issues are more nuanced, like when you say you are designing an eye tracking experiment, you need to define an area of interest, and you need to measure the sensor outputs in a specific area of interest. So in the study on the left, they said that we measured the fixation time on the button on the bottom right. So how big is this button? So they created an area of interest that is 400% of the size of the button. And that's okay. Is it? Or not? The worst thing about this is that we don't know if it is correct or not. Some people try to use bigger areas of interest because they say that it correlates with the results better. Some people use smaller, but this also leaves a lot of room for manipulation, right? So, and this is because there are no widely accepted conventions, and there have been many papers in the past that told you, yes, you should be using bigger areas of interest because the sensors are not very accurate. And this message came from a specialist of eye tracking technology. It's not like it could be taken lighthearted, but more recent research have shown that this practice is wrong because the eye tracking sensors have improved over the past few years. But even though, if you read influential papers from, let's say, 2010, you would see that, yeah, I need to generate bigger areas of interest just to compensate for eye tracking mistakes. Or if I use a cheap eye tracking sensors, then I should be using bigger areas of interest. And this is wrong, in my opinion. In my opinion, the areas of interest, it's something that should not be debatable. Okay. Then we have other issues, like how do they call the variables that are reporting? So starting from the eye tracking. So it could be that they call number of fixations as attention, or they could call fixation time as attention. So it's a completely different variable, as we will see in the next presentation, but it has the same name. So if you want to do meta-analysis in the future, you cannot correlate between the same name of variables. Then other issues is that they use too much those names related to cognitive states. So in this particular study, they were calling the variables fear, like attention, valence, the name of the variable. And there was no information of how this variable was extracted. So we have conducted a study with Evangelis Oikonomou on this, and we have found that what are, let's say, the appropriate ways to report your variables and not your, the appropriate ways to report variables in eye tracking research and neuromarketing research in general. And so we have developed a checklist that includes some factors that affect the experiments, like so in most of the studies, they only report, like this is for eye tracking in particular, they report the name of the device that is used in almost all studies. But the configuration and the sampling rates or the software used and the settings of the software is only present in around 20% of the studies. So if you don't know the some hyperparameter settings, like the definition of fixation. So we will talk about this in the next presentation when you understand what is a fixation. But if you change this particular parameter, it makes a huge difference in the results. And we also did the same for EEG. And yes, so perhaps the most important problem in neuromarketing research is data and code sharing. So in many cases, those experiments are, so what's the procedure? It's normally you rely on some specific vendor of the eye tracking equipment that is packed with the software. You don't know how to set up the software, so you rely on a company to set it up for you. They do it correctly. That's why you get nice results in your experiments. But you don't know how to report those results because you don't know how to use the equipment. And this equipment is very expensive, and using it is very expensive. I used one eye tracker in my experiments for 1 week, and it costed like 3,000 euros just for renting the space and the hardware and the software, just to collect the data, not for the analysis or whatever. So it's very expensive, and it's a very good business. And you could imagine that the same happens with EEG. You cannot simply rent equipment. You rent all the analysis as a service, let's say, thing. And you get the data, and then you analyze them. But the problem is, with this limited amount of time, you might forget to track some important parameters. And in many cases, there's this vendor lock-in thing where you cannot really share the data because they are not, you didn't save on the open formats. You used the vendor formats to save the data. You did the analysis there, and now you cannot convert them back to open formats. The only way to properly get, and then, of course, the researchers doesn't say that. They say that, okay, we cannot release the data for privacy issues, because if the participants said no, then of course they cannot share the data. But this is rarely the case, right? The real case is that researchers forget to save the data in open formats. This is why it's not shared. So, okay, let's stop here for maybe some questions or for a couple of minutes. Does anyone have questions from the Zoom audience? I guess no. Anyone from the live audience? Of course, we will have more time in the next sessions. So we'll be moving to the next presentation in a couple of minutes.
να πάω να σου φέρω εγώ ένα ποτήρι μετά.
Okay. So, if everyone is ready, we can move on to the next presentation. So it will be me again. So this is about eye tracking technology. So this presentation is outlined as follows. First, we will do some introduction of what is eye tracking. Then we'll dive deeper into the methodology of eye tracking, how it works. Then some deep learning methods. Then some eye tracking measures, what are the variables and tools, and what are some future research topics. So if you search at literature, you search of eye tracking or gaze estimation, it refers to the problem of determining where a human subject is looking on a given specific time moment. Eye tracking has attracted the interest of a wide range of disciplines, ranging from signal processing, neuroscience, computer vision, machine learning, due to its important applications in psychology, medicine, sports, virtual reality, robotics, education, and marketing, to name a few. Many different solution variants exist depending on the target application and specifications. So we have eye tracking based on infrared cornea reflection. We have eye tracking based on event cameras. We have eye trackers based on eye tracking glasses, or video only eye tracking, which is, let's say, the most friendly to machine learning and computer vision research. And so, eye tracking is an invaluable tool for extracting metrics, like fixation time to some stimuli related to cognitive emotional responses, such as attention. And then we have that controlled marketing experiments are expensive, time-consuming, and in many cases, unnatural. Equipment used in marketing experiments is in many cases too much overspecified for the task at hand. Like they have eye trackers that are able to detect saccades at 1000 hertz. And it's a huge overkill, because in marketing you only care about fixation most of the time. And you don't need an event-based eye tracker that costs 100,000 euros just to conduct some to evaluate some visual design on a website. You could do that with a simple video-based eye tracker, but if you don't know about those technologies, you opt for the best in many cases. And if the university pays for that, you opt for the best, right? So, but this is wrong. There should be some more insights. And since conducting experiments is expensive, the data sets that have been developed so far, of course, from the marketing aspect, are very small with few participants, so we have gained limited insights. So video-based eye tracking could offer a valuable alternative, like in computer vision experiments. They have eye tracking experiments in computer vision domain. They have huge data sets with a lot more data shared and a lot more open, and this have transformed the domain of eye tracking. So now we are diving off into how eye tracking actually works. So video-based gaze tracking, it's another name for eye tracking, consists of several steps. It's accumulating error, of course. So one is the camera calibration. where you are estimating the intrinsic and extrinsic camera parameters. Then we have some phase detection using hard cascades in the past or deep learning now. Some optional steps could include eye detection, fiducial detection, and estimation of the 3D position of the eyes. Then we have the estimation of the gaze vector. So this gaze vector could be a 3D vector or a 2D vector after canceling translation and scaling factors. And we have the intersection of the gaze vector with the computer screen. So we would say that is three main steps. One is feature detection and eye detection. The second is estimation of the gaze vector from the eyes to this. And then we have the intersection of the gaze vector with the stimuli. So the legacy eye tracking pipeline requires an eye tracking camera sensor with known internal camera parameters K. That would be a matrix. And is positioned relative to the user and some objects, some stimuli, like a screen, a computer screen. And the stimuli could be like, so this image was generated by AI. So let's say that the stimuli is the cat. Okay, and we want to measure the fixation time on the cat. So what do we need to know? We have a camera on top of the screen. We have a human looking at the screen. And we have our stimuli. So what we don't know? We don't know the 3D position of the person. We don't know the vectors from the camera to the eyes and from the eyes to the screen. This is what we need to calculate. So to do that, so the three steps are eye and feature detection in the camera coordinate space. Then we have the 3D eye pose and gaze direction estimation. This is called the inverse perspective problem. And then we have the localization of the gaze direction to the stimuli. So those eye tracking, the eye tracking sensors essentially capture images, and from these images we want to capture features. Those features are in the 2D space, in the what is coming from the camera. We want to know where is the pupil center, and we want to know the corneal glint. And eye trackers can estimate that based on. So if we don't have infrared eye trackers, we can also estimate some further facial landmarks, the fiducials, let's say. And so this is done by feature detection methods using deep learning or corneal reflection. In corneal reflection, you simply do thresholding, because if you, let's say, pose some infrared light to your eyes, the eyes become red. Okay. And then, if we assume that O is the origin of the camera coordinate system in the 3D space, then the normalized gaze ray directions can be obtained by the camera intrinsic matrix. So we would call this D equals to the inverse of the camera matrix times the detected features P. We then know that we don't know the 3D position yet, we only know the gaze direction. To know the actual 3D position of the eye, it lies along the ray defined by O and D. Similarly, using the same equations, we can determine the directions of other features, like the corneal glints. So what else do we know? We know that the eye is not rectangular, right? It's an elliptical, of an elliptical shape. So in legacy methods, they did the assumption that the eye is a sphere with center C and some fixed radius R. Okay, and the pupil offset is located at a fixed distance D from the eye's center. So assuming that a person is looking straight ahead, the pupil in the 3D space is P capital, so it's with a C, and times plus the matrix R, which R is the eye's orientation. We also know that our corneal, the glint, it cannot be bigger than a fixed radius R. So if we estimate the outer corneal area, we know that this is exactly equal to R. So from the set of equations that we can obtain from feature detection and eye detection, we can calculate some initial guesses of matrices C and R. The eye, so C is the actual 3D eye position, and R is the orientation. And we can use those guesses to reproject the features P and so for the eye and the glint, the estimated positions. And from this, we can define an error function that compares our reprojections with the initial detections from the sensors. And we can do that recursively by collecting data within some time. And finally, we reach to some good guesses. Now, after we have localized the eye position and orientation in the 3D camera coordinate space, we need to transform this to the to localize the gaze to our stimuli, the screen. So to this end, we need another transformation matrix that takes it from the camera coordinate space and projects it to the screen. So the first method, it's to do manual measurements. If you measure where is the camera positioned and where is the screen positioned, and you know the difference in the 3D space, you can calculate this matrix. The second way is to use the captured data. So we ask the participants to fixate at specific points on the screen. And we do the same procedure as this error function. We have our estimations from an initially random matrix, and we correct those estimations based on but we assume that the person is looking at the specific points we tell them. Okay. So the challenges in appearance-based gaze estimation. So first of all, we have multiple sources for input variance. So one is some variance related to capture conditions, like camera specifications, experiment locations, illumination conditions, subject distances, angles from the sensors, or even we can control some of the conditions by trying to keep the lights consistent, trying to use headrests so the participants cannot move to further front or behind. Then we also, besides the capture conditions, we also have variance related to individual test subject appearance, like their physical characteristics. If they have different age, gender, skin, or even eye color, or if they have ophthalmic health conditions. And this individual variance cannot be controlled before doing the measurements. Okay. Then we have deep learning-based eye tracking, which is what is happening now most of the time, even combined with the legacy. So deep learning-based eye tracking methods removes the need for estimating the intermediate transformation using geometry. Instead, it formulates the gaze estimation as a regression problem where a neural network is trained end-to-end to estimate the gaze direction from a given image. And by saying image, it could be, let's say you have a camera sensor that captures your image, and from this image, it can extract its own features that correspond to the gaze direction. So no geometry, no 3D estimation, no projections, nothing. And there is no reliance to explicit eye models, which was a source of error. So in legacy methods, you would assume that the eye is spherical or elliptical or something. In deep learning, you don't have to. You just put the right output and the deep learning model does everything for you. So in that sense, the problem statement is so much simplified. So assuming a data set of images and gaze directions that we know with some ground truth. This is the tough part to create the ground truth for this type of data sets. For some participant, let's say, so the gaze estimation problem is formulated as a regression problem where G is a mapping function that extracts features from facial images or from eye images, depending on the method. And Y is a linear operation that we assume it follows this mapping function where you estimate a weight and a bias to convert those features into actual gaze directions. Okay. So in angular coordinates, it is a 2D signal. And this linear operation is trained simultaneously with the mapping function in an end-to-end fashion using some appropriate loss functions like the L1 loss. So how different methods, how eye tracking methods differ between each other? So legacy methods used, let's say, eye images or facial images. So the problem is that I don't have a pointer here. So I do have, but I cannot show to the remote participants. So does it work? I'm not really proficient in this. Yeah, okay, let's forget about it. So anyway, the differences between those different methods would be what type of input they are using. So others use eye images, others use facial images, others use even features, or they combine outputs from legacy eye trackers and features extracted from a neural network. They, of course, have different architectures of how they process those input, and they could have a different objective function that they optimize. So here we have some of the most influential datasets in eye tracking. So this MPI gaze is they developed a neural network and a dataset for gaze estimation that was used as the gold standard for so many years. So their method would include receiving an input image, then doing landmark detection and face detection using traditional methods. From this, they also use the 3D face fitting model. And they also use the neural network to extract features from the eye images. And from that, they extracted the gaze vector. Then it's, so I'm not going to go through all the data sets one by one. So this was in RGBD dataset with depth information. So one of the most influential methods was this gaze captured paper that was a huge dataset, and this paper was very influential because they only used a very lightweight neural network, the Lenet neural network. Okay, if you know from that does MNIST classification, and they used it. They processed images from the left eye, cropped image, from the right eye, and the facial image. They passed it through this neural network. They combined the outputs and they did the direct gaze estimation. And it worked 3 times better than this traditional plus neural network based method. Because the data set was huge. It included 1,450 people. And even by training on this dataset, they had the best results in the other dataset without any fine-tuning. So it was very influential. And after that, of course, we have newer and better datasets, like the ETH gaze dataset. And now the datasets are even these are the same people that have developed the initial MPI gaze dataset, and now they are doing gaze in 3D, so you can estimate the gaze of all those people from the same image at the same time. So this is the most recent research results. So some limitations. Of course, the camera spatial and temporal resolutions is a limitation. Saccades cannot be detected with commercial RGB cameras. The lighting conditions remain a challenge. The distances from the sensors are also very difficult to model, even with deep learning. You need huge data set for many different distances. The typical errors of a webcam-based system is around the range of 4 degrees. That's the state-of-the-art error rates. Infrared-based systems is around up to, let's say, 2 degrees. And modern deep learning systems have reported errors between 1 degree and 2 degrees. So after we have this method, what are we extracting? What are the signals that we process? So first is the relative eye positions. So that would be the coordinates of the eye position on the screen, normalized between 0 to 1 over time. And then it's the pupil dilation data, expressed in millimeters over time for both the left and the right eye, that is used to detect fixations and saccades. The eye tracking measures that are commonly used are fixations. So fixations are periods when the eye remains relatively still, focusing on a specific point. So during a fixation, the brain processes the visual information from that point. Fixation detection algorithms identify these stable gaze points by analyzing the raw eye movements data for periods of low velocity and stable gaze. Then we have the saccades, which are rapid ballistic eye movements that quickly shift the gaze from one point of interest to another. They are very fast, and the brain suppresses visual input during those movements, so we don't perceive the blur. Saccades are crucial for exploring a visual scene and bringing new information into the fovea, the central part of the retina, responsible for sharp vision. Then we have scan paths, where the scan paths are just sequences of fixation and saccades. And then we have the gaze heat maps, which are graphical representations that show the distribution of gaze over visual stimulus. So what would be a fixation detection algorithm? So we have the eye tracker that extracts a signal of the eye, the relative eye positions. So you could say that over time, we have specific positions. So what is a fixation then? To extract the fixation, you need to process the signal. So you would say that if consecutive signals are between this distance of each other and both in space and in time, then we group them together. This is fixation detection. Okay, this is the simplest method. And of course, there are many algorithms for fixation detection. You can even do deep learning based using RNNs to do a fixation detection. And this, the algorithm used for the fixation detection is of paramount importance to do reproducibility. Okay, if you don't know the algorithm, then all the results will be different if you conduct the same study. Okay. Another way of identifying what is a fixation is maybe you would say that fixation detection is difficult, so you would do saccade detection, which is using another method, and then all the remainder points are fixations. So that's another way. So the metrics from the fixation detection are usually paired with some area of interest. And so it becomes very important of how we define the area of interest. So if we do what I said in the previous presentation, that you use big areas of interest, you will have higher fixation time and bigger and higher number of fixations. It's natural. Then we also have the time to first fixation, which would be how much time it takes from the user to fixate to the first area of interest. So those are very nice metrics, and time to first fixation is very useful to see if an advertisement is attractive in essence. Then we have the saccade detection. So if the eyes move faster than a threshold, it is considered a saccade. And it could also be dispersion based. So if the eyes move further than some angle, it could also be considered as a saccade. And there are also machine learning methods. So after we detect the fixations and saccades, how do we represent them? So one way is using scan paths. So the scan path would be consecutive fixations or saccades, and an arrow that points one circle to the other. So that would be the scan path. The scan paths focus mostly on the temporal element. On the right, we have a heat map. The heat maps are usually videos. They are evolving over time, and it provides more insight about the spatial element of attention. So this output was from eye tracking experiments that I conducted in the University of Hamburg. So some considerations for conducting eye tracking experiments. So this relates to the checklist that I presented in the previous presentation. So what makes a difference in each study? So it's the sensor type used and its configuration. It's the scene geometry, the experimental conditions, the screen size, the resolution of the screen makes a big difference because we are projecting to a specific pixel. The lighting conditions hugely affect video-based eye tracking results. Then we have the calibration error that we obtained during the calibration procedure of the eye tracking. If you have stringent experimental settings, you could reach even up to errors reach lower than 1 degree. If you use a webcam and no calibration, you would be at a range of 5 or 6 degrees. And if you don't report that I didn't do a calibration procedure or I did a calibration procedure, the results are hugely different, of course. And there are many experiments that were conducted using webcams in even remote, using the participants were not controlled, they were remote at their home. And there were very big and nice influential researches, but so I highly advise for using webcam-based solutions in eye tracking experiments for marketing in particular, because you can capture a lot more data, and this will compensate with some error. So you don't need to be that precise. So if you want to evaluate between two types of stimuli, like a brand logo, if you want to distinguish between with two brand logos, which one attracts the most attention? And you have two images of the same size, and you ask the participants to pick which one they like. Okay. And you want to, so that's a simple experiment. Do you need an eye tracker that costs 30,000 euros? No. You can do that with a webcam. So it depends. What is the type of experiment? If you want to process the cognitive load while making a decision, then of course you need an expensive eye tracker because you want to detect saccades. But it's also up to you. You can measure the cognitive load with subjective measures and use a cheap eye tracker to do whatever else you want to do. Another research that that was part of my research in the University of Antwerp was to generate a method that doesn't require calibration. So the calibration process of eye tracking is that when some new participants come in and they want to use the eye tracking solutions, you need to calibrate the eye tracker on him. And to do that, you have your neural network trained, let's say, on your trained dataset, and then you do an adaptation by training only the linear layer of the neural network with the data from the new participant. But if this new participant is not with you and he is at your computer in his house, what can you do? You cannot control that. You could prompt him, of course, to say, look at this spot, but you don't know that the participant actually followed this procedure. So what can you do about it? So this research targets this scenario. And so to this end, I designed a method that can achieve calibration only by using images from the participant. So when a new participant arrives, it uses images captured from the first few frames, and it informs the model of this domain adaptation, let's say. Okay, so I have talked more or less about this. So in this research, we have I have assumed that we have some support cases that so during training, the neural network was trained with two types. So I'll go directly here. So we had two type of inputs. One is the facial image, and then we have facial images of people looking at of the same person. So this is important. Of the same person, but looking at different directions. So a CNN architecture was used to extract features from the input images and the images which well, of course, input again, but there are other, let's say, images from the same person. And those two features are mixed by an attention mechanism, and they are concatenated. So from this branch, we have X, which are the features of a standard eye tracking system, the top red line. And from the bottom, by using similar images of the same images from the same person looking at different locations, we extract also some features that are attended with the initial features and are concatenated with the standard eye tracking features. So at the worst case scenario, we have the features from the standard eye tracking method. In the best case scenario, we have more information. So it turns out that this architecture can improve the results without doing actual calibration by, let's say, 15% or so. So it's, if we do a web-based application, eye tracking application, it's substantial, because if we expect an error rate of around 4 degrees, it could be decreased to 3.5 degrees. So it's very good, and it's also very stable. And yes, so yes, the limitation, of course, is that it has not been tested in actual eye tracking experiments of the scenario that I'm saying. It was only tested in datasets, where in datasets, the conditions are not necessarily that much uncontrolled. They are a little bit, let's say, they capture a little bit of the variation, not. But in reality, I would expect that it would help even more. So future research topics of eye tracking research could include calibration-free systems, because the calibration process is kind of tedious and takes a lot of time in many experiments. We also have advanced HCI, where we would have gaze-aware interfaces, human-robot, gaze-aware collaboration, VR applications, AR applications. Then we could also have multimodal estimation of cognitive and affective states, fusing information, eye tracking with EEG and GSR, 3D gaze tracking. Then another interesting application is to completely eliminate eye tracking, to go from eye tracking sensing to eye tracking prediction. So if we have huge data sets of eye tracking with some marketing stimuli, let's say huge data sets, why do we need the eye tracker? Can't the neural network directly predict the attention of people? So this could be a very promising research direction. Then we have privacy issues. So according to GDPR, eye tracking is considered personal data and high biometric data, actually, which is very sensitive to... Yes, but do we actually know that? Can anyone classify another person from the eye tracking data, from where they are looking at the screen? We don't know that. It's not measured. And if it is a problem, I expect that in classification systems, if you train it, of course, it could identify some patterns eventually, okay? But if it does, what can you do to de-identify this eye tracking data? Can you somehow remove the patterns without disrupting the signal? So it would be a very interesting research direction to show this. So that's the end of this presentation. So any questions, any insights about eye tracking in general? Or what about from the remote participants? Are you still there? Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay. Thank you, Vasily, for the interesting topic. I don't know if I missed something because I was out for 5 minutes, but I would like to ask a question about the eye tracking. How can a researcher or somebody can distinguish whether, a customer, let's say, uh, passively looks or stares an object uh, compared to another one that really attends something. Like,
Okay.
because I may go somewhere, see something, and be distracted and just looking there. How the marketers or the researcher take care of this? Thank you.
So, yes, that's a very interesting question. So, one way is we consider that we target it with eye tracking alone. Okay. So you cannot do you cannot identify that with an eye tracker that only focuses on fixation measure. But if you have an eye tracker that also includes the pupil dilation, then you can infer that let's say pupil dilation could be related to increased attention. And then, of course, if you have other sensors as well. So if you have a GSR sensor, when you're looking at something and you are excited, you are paying attention. But if you are not excited, then... and of course, with the EEG sensors, the fMRI. But no, the more sensors we put, the more expensive the experiment is. So, so you want to infer them using sensors alone. But eye tracking alone, I would say that it's not very reliable for inferring if someone is passively looking or actively looking. Not in every case. In some cases, it could be reliable because when you are passively looking, sometimes you are not during a fixation, you are during a saccade. So during a saccade, you are also thinking something. So you're not actively attending somewhere, but still, it's not that to increase this reliability. What I would do would be to combine with subjective metrics, like ask the participants some informative questions to understand if they were attending or not, and try to combine this with signal analysis. Because incorporating more sensors, it's expensive. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do we have any other question here in audience or in the Zoom? I can see the chat, so if you have something, you can type it and I can transfer it to the lecturer. I don't see something, so...
Okay. So...
I would like to thank Dr. Vasilios Mygdalis for its first part of the presentation. And now we will have a short break for a coffee. And we will get back in around 30 minutes, 40 minutes.
Yeah, in 11:30.
Yeah, 11:30.
11:30. Okay. Thank you. So, hello everyone. This is Dr. Vasilis Mygdalis again. As I mentioned in my first presentation, Vangelis was not able to make it eventually, so I will presenting his part, his slides, which will be about electroencephalograms and neuromarketing. So the contents of these presentations will be some review of what is neuromarketing from the EEG side, how EEG is used, how we are designing neuromarketing experiments, and it will also include some data analysis in neuromarketing scenarios. So, neuromarketing combines neuroscience, psychology, and marketing. It explores how consumers' brain responds to advertising and branding. And it uses tools like electroencephalogram, fMRI, eye tracking that we've seen in the previous presentation, and GSR sensors. And the goal is to understand some of the cognitive states. So we have also presented these slides previously. So, and this slide too. So for those that were not present in the previous presentation, neuromarketing is a field that combines neuroscience, psychology, and marketing to study how consumers make decisions. Uses tools like sensors, electroencephalogram sensors, fMRI, eye tracking, galvanic skin response sensors are the most commonly used sensors. And these methods reveal non-conscious reactions to advertisement, products, and branding. So EEG, or electroencephalography, is one of the most widely used tools in neuromarketing. It's a non-invasive method that records the brain electrical activity using sensors placed on the scalp. These sensors detect tiny voltage changes measured in microvolts that are produced by neural firing in the brain. What makes EEG particularly valuable in marketing research is that it can capture responses in real time with millisecond precision. Researchers use EEG to detect key mental states such as attention, emotional engagement, and cognitive load. For example, they can determine whether a consumer is fully engaged with an ad, confused by a layout, or emotionally moved by a brand message. In practical terms, EEG is often used to test the effectiveness of advertisement, packaging, website design, offering insights that are often invisible to traditional self-report methods. Its portability, especially with modern wireless headsets, makes it suitable for lab or even experiments in realistic shopping environments. So EEG in general involves, let's say, wearing a device. From this device, we will be capturing signals. Depending on the resolution of the EEG sensors, it could be 20 channels from electrodes placed in different positions in the head, from 20 to 128 or even 256 electrodes in recent sensors and expensive sensors. Then, after we capture this signal, we need to do some pre-processing to separate the actual signal from the artifacts. EEG has huge artifact and a huge and a very low signal-to-noise ratio in general. So pre-processing is definitely needed, and this pre-processing also extracts some of the key signals like frequency bands. And from those extracted signals, you then do some analysis to extract features, temporal features that are produced in a vector space, and these features can thereby be classified or regressed in conjunction to product exposure. So to do, excuse me, I need some water. Yeah. So sorry about that. To conduct a neuromarketing experiment, first of all, you define some objective of the study. So this objective could be some comparison between advertisement or the two different settings. And then you devise some hypothesis and some metrics that you are willing to measure. Like, which ad do you like the most? Or it could be what emotions are extracted from you, purchase intentions, or impact. After you develop your hypothesis, you then start to design the stimuli. So the stimuli could be audio visual, images, web pages, real products, could be some cognitive stimuli, or even flavor stimuli. After you have defined the stimuli, you then decide which devices you are going to use. You're going to use EEG, obviously, from this respect, or you might want in conjunction some eye tracking, some electrodermal sensors, or heart rate sensors, and etc. After you determine which device you are going to use in your experiment. You then collect what are the data pre-processing techniques that you are going to use. So to extract the information about the bands of EEG, you need to design an appropriate bandpass filter. You will need ICA to separate signals from artifacts in the independent component analysis. Then there are some other filters, some downsampling, some and everything. After you have done the pre-processing, you will also define what type of features you are going to extract from those signals using the Fourier transform, the wavelet transform, or power spectral density, and etc. And finally, you will define how you are going to use those features to do the validation of your hypothesis. And that would be, you could use neural networks to this end, SVM, statistics, KNN, or whatever. So every neuromarketing experiment should begin with a clear definition of its objectives and hypotheses. This is a crucial step that shapes the entire experimental design. First, you ask, what exactly do we want to measure? Are we interested in the consumer's emotional response, their level of engagement, how well they pay attention, or their memory, what they're likely to be remembered later? Once this is established, we then formulate the hypothesis. It would be some specific testable predictions based on neuroscience principles. For example, logo A elicits higher frontal asymmetry than logo B. This would suggest that logo A triggers a more positive emotional response. Such hypothesis will guide how the stimuli should be designed to select what EEG features are appropriate for this use case and how those features can be interpreted to get the results. After defining the objectives, the next step is to carefully select the stimuli, the marketing content that participants will view during the experiment. This could include a wide range of materials depending on the research goals, such as video advertisements for analyzing attention or emotional peaks, product packaging to evaluate some design appeal, website layouts or e-commerce flows for studying usability, even price tags or brand logos if it focuses on decision making or preference. And what's important here is that these stimuli should be annotated or time-locked, meaning that every meaningful event in the content, like a scene change, product appearance, or emotional cue, is marked precisely. This allows to later synchronize the EEG data with specific events in the stimulus timeline, which is crucial for extracting meaningful event-related features. Without proper synchronization, it becomes very difficult to relate brain activity measurements with specific moments in the experience. So once the stimuli are selected, the next step is to recruit participants for the experiments. It's important to choose a sample that reflects the target demographic. For example, if the product is aimed for young adults, then young adults should be recruited. If it's a luxury brand, socioeconomic background might also be relevant. Before the experiment starts, it needs to have informed consent. This means informed consent. A participant must be aware that the purpose of the study is fully clear, what is going to be recorded, including brain activity, and how this data will be used. Ethical approval is essential both in academic and in commercial studies. Furthermore, there should be a control for external factors that could influence brain activity. For instance, caffeine, alcohol, or lack of sleep affect EEG signals and introduces noise, especially in measures of attention and arousal. So all the conditions for the experiments must stay consistent. So now I remember that there was a study in CERT one day where they were instructing the participants to view some affective stimuli like pictures of dogs or nice landscapes and etc. And then they asked them to drink one shot of vodka and do the same again. And they found that the difference in the signal is like a very big. It's like a completely different participant. And yes, this is EEG signals are very sensitive to such factors, and in fact, those signals are very sensitive in general. Like if you ask the same participant to do the same experiment on Tuesday and then on Wednesday, you will get a different signal. So that's one challenge of EEG studies in general. So before recording any data, the EEG system should be calibrated. And first, we select a suitable EEG device based on the needs of the study. Most neuromarketing experiments use systems with 14 to 64 channels, depending on the level of spatial detail required. Device from well-known vendors. My mouse is gone. Okay, it's back. I don't know why this happens. The mouse keeps disappearing. Now it's okay. Yes, but so next, The participant's scalp needs to be prepared. Most possibly, this applies cleaning the skin or applying conductive gel or saline, depending on the cup, to ensure low electrode impedance. Good signal quality depends on minimizing resistance between the electrodes and the scalp. After setup, baseline calibration is performed. This could involve recording a few minutes of resting EEG signal with eyes open and closed. Because the most common artifacts in EEG is blinking. Okay. So blinks appear in the EEG signal like huge spikes, and they need to be cleaned. So to do that, you need to capture it before the actual session. So it's the baseline data. Then, with everything in place, then it's time to start the experiment. Participants are seated in a controlled environment, usually a quiet, dimly lit room to minimize distractions and ensure consistent recording conditions. Then the selected stimuli is presented to the participants, whether it's a video ad, a website interface, or a product image, and EEG signals are recorded continuously throughout the session. Depending on the study design, EEG can be combined with other modalities to enrich data, like eye tracking could show exactly where the participant is looking, and galvanic skin response, heart rate can be used to measure psychological arousal, and behavioral responses can also be included, like by button presses or rate products based on a scale. And it's important that all these signals are synchronized with the EEG data to give a complete picture of what the participant was experiencing at each moment. Once the data collection is complete, we move to pre-processing, a critical step to clean and prepare the raw signal for analysis. First, a bandpass filter is applied to keep frequency components between 1 and 45 Hz. Frequencies lower than 1 Hz is typically noise, and frequencies more than 45% is part of gamma frequency, but it's not exactly of high energy, so it's not very relevant. And this helps remove slow drifts and high frequency noise, such as muscle activity. Next step is the artifact removal. EEG is very sensitive to non-brain signals like eye blinks, jaw clenches, or electrical interference. So this can be removed by either manually or with independent component analysis. Then comes the re-referencing, which adjusts the signals by subtracting a reference, usually the average of all channels, to improve consistency. And the continuous EEG signal is then segmented into time-locked chunks. Those chunks are called epochs. They are aligned to specific events, like product appearances or ads in changes. Finally, power spectral features can be computed, like alpha or theta band activity, or event-related potentials, ERPs, like the P300, depending on the research goals. Pre-processing is essential to ensure that later results truly reflect brain activity, not noise or artifacts. After pre-processing, the next step is feature extraction. That means converting clean EEG signals into quantitative metrics that can analyze or feed into machine learning models. A common approach is to extract power in specific frequency bands, such as alpha, which is from 8 to 13 Hz, often linked with to relaxation or disengagement. Beta, from 13 to 30 Hz, which is associated with alertness and focused attention. Then it's the theta band, between 4 to 8 Hz, which is related to memory encoding and emotional processing. Other widely used metrics are the frontal asymmetry index, which compares alpha power in the left versus the right frontal cortex. It gives insight into emotional valence, whether the reaction is more positive or negative. In event-locked designs, we also extract event-related potentials, like the P300, linked to attention and novelty, or the N400, which is associated with semantic mismatch or cognitive effort. Depending on the analysis method, we can then use statistical features like mean, standard deviation, peak amplitude, or even work with raw signal windows if using deep learning models. These features form the basis for the next step, which is classification and regression. Once features are extracted, we then move to the data analysis or classification phase. In traditional analysis, we might compare experimental conditions using statistical tests. Add A produced higher frontal asymmetry than add B, for instance, or whether one scene triggered more theta power than another. But increasingly, researchers use AI and machine learning models to perform classification tasks based on EEG features. Those models, such as support vector machines, KNN, CNNs, are trained to detect patterns in brain activity that correspond to cognitive or emotional states. Typical classification goals in neuromarketing include attention versus distraction. Did the ad capture attention? Remembered versus forgotten. Was the memory encoded in? Was the product encoded in the memory? High or low engagement? How emotionally involved was the participants? And these models help marketeers make data-driven decisions about which content is most effective, not based on what people say on their reports, but what the sensors are saying. After analysis or classification, the next step is to interpret the results in a marketing context. This means translating the EEG metrics into actionable insights. Which version of an ad or product elicited more attention based on increased beta power or shorter time to first fixation? Did one design generate a stronger emotional response, as indicated by frontal asymmetry or GSR peaks? Were certain scenes more memorable based on increased theta activity or ERP amplitudes? To make this interpretation reliable, it's important to combine neural data with behavioral responses, like recall accuracy, preference rating, purchase intent. This multi-level approach strengthens the conclusions and helps understand not just what participants did, but why they reacted that way. In the end, these steps connect brain data directly to marketing effectiveness. The final step in a neuromarketing experiment is to report the results, and more importantly, apply the insights to real-world marketing decisions. This means translating complex EEG and biometric data into actionable recommendations. For example, if one ad version consistently triggered more engagement and better recall, that version might be selected for the final campaign. Or if eye tracking and EEG results show that key product features were being ignored, designers might choose to adjust layout or color schemes to redirect visual attention. These findings should be shared with creative teams, product managers, marketing strategists, in a format they can understand, like attention heat maps, emotion timelines, or performance dashboards. The ultimate value of neuromarketing lies not just in understanding the brain, but in using that understanding to optimize messaging, design, and customer experience. So, EEG works by placing electrodes on the scalp of to detect the brain's natural electrical signals. These signals are generated by neuronal activity and measured in microvolts. Because EEG does not involve surgery or penetration, it is completely safe and comfortable. This is especially important in neuromarketing, where participants may be ordinary consumers rather than clinical patients. EEG is also portable and affordable, making it suitable to use not only in research labs, but also in real-world environments, such as retail stores, focus groups, or even at home. In the context of neuromarketing, EEG allows us to monitor how a person's brain responds to an ad, a brand, or product in real time without disrupting the viewing experience. This makes it an ideal tool for capturing authentic non-verbal reaction that traditional surveillance might miss. Electroencephalogram is a type of biosignal that reflects the electrical activity of the brain. This electrical activity originates from the brain's basic building block, the neuron. The human brain contains millions of neurons, which communicate with each other using electrical impulses. When large groups of neurons fire together, especially those near the surface of the brain, they can be detected outside the skull. To record those signals, electrodes on the scalp are placed using a standardized arrangement, like the 1020 system. Then the electrode picks up the cumulative electrical activity as it diffuses through the brain tissue, skull, and scalp. Even though each individual neuron contributes only a tiny signal, the synchronized firing of thousands of neurons is strong enough to be measured and analyzed. This is what allows us to use EEG in fields like neuromarketing. So EEG detects voltage fluctuations resulting from ionic current flow within neurons. These signals are very small, around 10 to 100 microvolts, and require amplification and filtering. They are typically sampled at 250 to 1000 Hz for marketing research purposes. And noise is a challenge, especially from eye blinks and muscle movements, hence the need for pre-processing. So in this slide, we see a general view of the brain and the various brain regions that are related to human senses and decision-making. So some of the most important frontal brain region that play a role in decision-making in the context of neuromarketing. First, we have the prefrontal cortex, region involved in decision-making, emotional regulation, and valuation. The left is associated with approach-related behavior and positive emotional responses, while the right, on the other hand, is linked to withdrawal, often reflecting negative emotions or hesitation. This left-right balance forms the basis of a widely used neuromarketing metric called frontal alpha symmetry. It helps us estimate whether a stimulus elicits a positive or a negative reaction. Next is the orbitofrontal cortex, which evaluates subjective value and rewards. When a consumer assesses how desirable a product is, or whether this price seems fair, this region becomes active. Lastly, we have the anterior cingulate cortex, which plays a role in conflict detection and attention allocation. In neuromarketing, it's often linked to cognitive dissonance. For instance, when a customer likes a brand but finds the price too high, or when trust in the brand is questioned. These regions help us interpret how consumers feel, focus, and decide, even when they can't verbalize those processes. Now, let's have a look at some posterior range brain regions that are especially important when consumers visually interact with ads, products, and digital content. We have the parietal cortex, which is involved in spatial awareness and sensory integration. In neuromarketing, this region is sensitive to visual layout and positioning. For example, how elements are arranged on a product label, website, or a store shelf. Next, the temporal lobes are responsible for memory, semantic processing, and auditory integration. These regions help with brand recognition and recall, meaning they play a key role in how well a consumer remembers an ad, logo, or message. Finally, the occipital cortex is the brain's primal visual processing area. It handles the early stages of seeing, detecting color, shape, and motion. In neuromarketing, strong EEG activity in the occipital region, especially increased beta power, can indicate a visual stimulus that has successfully captured visual attention. This is often measured when evaluating ads, logos, or packaging design. Together, those areas help us understand how consumers perceive, process, and remember visual marketing content. So in this image, we see a typical 1020 configuration system with 19 channels. EEG signals are recorded from multiple locations in the skull using electrodes at specific points. EEG signals are recorded from multiple locations in the skull using electrodes at specific points. For the placement of the electrodes, the International 1020 system is used, which consists of 19 active electrodes and 2 reference electrodes, which are placed near the earlobes or at the back of the ears. The odd and even numbering determine the right and left sides of the skull. So FP2 is on the left, FP3 is on the left, FP4 is on the right, and etc. Today, there are recording systems like 32, 64, 128, or 256 electrodes. EEG is usually described in terms of rhythmic activity and transient events. Rhythmic activity is divided into frequency bands. Now, EEG pre-processing is critical because EEG signals are raw, noisy, and prone to artifacts. The goals of the pre-processing is to improve the SNR ratio. I think the SNR ratio is around 10 to at times -9 or so. So, as you can imagine, the SNR is super low. So, pre-processing is needed to improve the SNR ratio, to remove neural artifacts like eye blinks and muscle, to enable accurate feature extraction and classification, and address the challenges like signal drift, power line interference, and psychological artifacts. So first, it's a bandpass filtering, which isolates relevant frequencies, like 1 to 45 Hz, then re-referencing, artifact rejections, removing segments with excessive noise, ICA or PCA to separate and remove eye muscle components, epoching, segmenting the signal around the stimuli, and baseline correction, subtract pre-stimulus activity. The purpose of bandpass filtering is to retain brain frequencies. I mean, the typical settings in neuromarketing involves a low cutoff, which removes sweat and skin potentials, and high cutoff at 45 Hz removes muscle and power line interferences. Optionally, we also need to include some notch filter to extract the frequencies of the electrical grid. I think we have described these things. So yes, we have described those things. It's the same. So, one of the most powerful features of EEG in neuromarketing is its ability to capture internal states like attention, emotion, and engagement, even when the participant isn't consciously aware of them. These mental states are reflected in specific frequency bands, like attention is typically linked to an increase in beta activity, especially in the 13 to 30 Hz range. This is often seen when a viewer is focused on or mentally alert. Emotion, particularly the valence, positive or negative, is measured using frontal alpha asymmetry. More alpha activity on the right compared to the left suggests negative emotion or avoidance, while the opposite suggests positive emotion or approach. Engagement or interest often corresponds to an increase in theta power, particularly in frontal regions, which has been associated with sustained attention or emotional involvement. These EEG patterns are used as features in AI or machine learning models, which can be trained to classify consumer states, such as whether someone is interested, bored, fatigued, or emotionally engaged. So the formula for calculating the frontal alpha asymmetry or emotional valence would be simply to subtract the logarithmic power from F4 electrode to the power of F3 electrode if it is placed at the... So F3 would be the left frontal and F4 would be the right frontal. Positive FA frontal alpha asymmetry indicates approach-related positive emotions and negative indicates withdrawal or negative emotions. So then we have the engagement index, would be a metric that quantifies cognitive engagement or alertness by comparing high frequency activity to lower frequency activity. So higher beta triggers more alertness, while higher alpha or theta is related to relaxed or idle states. The interpretation higher values of this engagement suggest increased attention and involvement with the stimulus, and it's often calculated over the frontal cortex only. Then we have the workload index, which is an index estimating mental effort by comparing theta power linked to task processing to alpha power linked to relaxation. So higher values indicate graded cognitive load or effort. Then we have the attention index, which is a ratio comparing beta and alpha activity. Higher values imply more sustained and directed attention to the stimulus. And it's often evaluated in parietal and occipital regions. So EEG has been applied in several key neuromarketing areas like advertisement testing, assess what parts of an ad capture attention or bore users, in packaging design, where it has been used to measure which visual elements trigger positive reactions, website UX evaluation, detecting frustration, confusion, or cognitive overload during navigation, and combined with behavioral data or eye tracking, EEG provides a holistic view of the consumer experience. So EEG signals are non-stationary, high-dimensional, and noisy. Manual feature engineering, like computing bump hours, is limited and often domain-specific. AI could enable automatic feature learning, pattern recognition, and behavioral prediction. And so, especially if we have a combination of some ground truth scenario, like some metrics captured from a questionnaire, which is not exactly that reliable, but it's still some ground truth we can use. We can feed to an ASI system the raw signal, and it can try to predict the outputs on its own. So classical machine learning in this context refers to supervised learning models like SVM, KNN, decision trees, random forests that require explicit features as input, in contrast to deep learning, which can learn from raw signals. The good thing with classic machine learning is that those models are easier to interpret, they are faster to train, and they are very well suited for small data sets, which is typically the case in neuromarketing experiments. So I think we have talked about those parts. So EEG signals are not stationary. Their statistical properties are changing over time, unlike stationary signals. This means that the mean, the variance, and the frequency content can change dynamically, depending on subject state, the task, and the actual stimulus. So algorithms must adapt to those time-varying patterns. Segment-wise or dynamic models, for instance, RNS or windowed analysis, are often needed. EEG is highly variable due to intra-subject variability. Brain responses changes across time, mood, or task context. Inter-session variability, different noise conditions, calculations, and impedance introduces variability. And of course, inter-subject variability, anatomical and psychological differences between participants. The same ad might cause high engagement in one subject or boredom in another, or the same subject might respond differently to the same stimulus if tested before or after lunch. So yes, this concludes the presentation of Vangelis. So if there are any questions, I apologize, I'm not an expert in EEG technology, actually. So if anyone has any questions, they should be directly addressed to my colleague Vangelis. So, and the final, so the next session, I was planning to include some interactive discussion, so to maybe we can discuss on how neuromarketing experiments trigger, or what, or this discussion could be unguided. So we can start off why you participants entered this session and what exactly did you expect to learn. So anyone wants to start? Why? Do you have any background in? Yes, please.
Okay, thank you, Vasily. Considering the analysis of eye tracking and EEG analysis on neuromarketing, do you believe that, or your opinion, we use this technology, right, just to see how a brain works or functions when we're on a, let's say, on an e-shop looking for products, who can use it? Like, we analyze it, we take the results. Can the companies use this, algorithms to create products that stimulate the most, the consumer's brain? And is it ethical? Do we manipulate the market? We shrink it because we make specific products? Do we over-optimizing the market? I'm asking, from another perspective, not from the research area, let's say the ethical and
Okay, so this is a two-part subject, let's say. So the first is the practical aspect. Let's say that we have designed the perfect neuromarketing experiments and we have obtained some key insights about some product and about some web layout or whatever. And now we want to implement changes to make our products better. Do we need the actual neuromarketing sensors with our new design? Possibly yes. And this is not possible because our customers will not be wearing EEG and submitting those signals to us, right? So what can we do about this? So, of course, there are some other metrics that we can track. So if we have an e-shop, we track some cookies. We also track some the viewing time. We know the session time. So when someone opens a website, a session is created. And when you exit and close this website, the session is closed. So this way, you can measure the overall session duration. There are also some other metrics, like when you hover through some items with your mouse, this can be recorded. So, and typically, when you hover around some products, you are also looking at the mouse pointer. So it's very correlated with what you're actually seeing. And those metrics are available. The companies can track those metrics. So if they design one neuromarketing experiments and extract the insights from the EEG or the eye tracking or whatever technology, and then find some relationships with the metrics that they can obtain, like the session time, the hovering time over products, and etc., then they could have a proxy of the actual neuromarketing sensors. So that's one way of getting the insights into a product. Another way is to simply infer on if the results are clear that our ad message does not attract attention, then of course you need to go through a completely different design, and it's very challenging to this is very challenging to measure because you need to also shape perception and attitude towards your branding. It's not easy to do without conducting experiments again. And now about the ethical aspect dimension, well, it depends. I mean, in every website, when we visit, it asks, do you accept cookies? If we say no, then they cannot track our metrics, let's say. Technically, they cannot. But in most cases, we want them to track our metrics because they end up in better designs, so we get more service out of the actual websites. Especially highly successful e-shops are constantly improving their design and suggestions for products and etc. And one could argue that we get better service from data-driven insights. But on the other hand, yes, the companies are using our data without us knowing that, and we don't get a share from this. We are part of improving a product, and we don't get a share out of it. So that's also a very interesting aspect.
So, from your experience on the research and your colleagues' experience, do you believe, actually, you track the emotions, right? From these EEG signals or so. Do you believe that we buy something we like, or we buy something that catches our attention first?
Well, actually, I have only
because sometimes, sorry, a lot of times, something, drops on the screen and, catches our attention. We buy it without, even think of it, or we like, or we don't like, or it's useful. That's why,
Well, I have not actually measured emotions when, for buying decisions. Never conducted such type of experiments, but I have conducted experiments with attention, and yes, definitely attention for me is maybe the most important cognitive state, because if you can capture attention in a positive way, hopefully, then most other cognitive and affective states come together with that, and even perception and decision making. And if you have some reputable brand, say for instance, sometimes attention comes as a result of our perception to this brand. Like if we are loyal to some type of brand, and then we see an advertisement from this specific brand, we're more likely to pay attention to it. So attention for me is everything, because it's not everything, but it's the most important thing you can capture, and it's also a cognitive state that you can measure quite accurately, because other cognitive states are more subjective. Eye tracking in particular is quite objective, and it has quite a few metrics that are very highly correlated with attention. So of course it could be mistakes in the algorithms that could confuse attention with passive attention, like looking something passively with active attention. Of course, this can easily be confused, but still, it's the best we have. And especially if you combine it with EEG data and other sensor data, you can reliably estimate the attention. But it's also very easy to screw up, like if you misalign the analysis signal of the stimuli in the time perspective, and you have asynchronous EEG and eye tracking data, and then it becomes surprisingly difficult that you cannot really put them back in synchronization in the future. If you imagine, okay, I will record eye tracking signal, I will also record EEG signals, and I will synchronize them later. And you see, you will see that it's not possible. So this procedure needs to start from the beginning correctly, especially because EEG data signals are very difficult to track. I mean, eye tracking data with the stimuli, they can be synchronized easier, because participant is looking there, the product is there, so it's possible. But EEG data, it's completely impossible because they are non-stationary.
Okay. Do you want to say something, Dimitri?
Just to follow up your question, when we have to deal with advertisement, I think that the most part of this process is to understand the emotions that we can create to the customer. So it's very important. Do you think that with AI, okay, with eye tracking, we can measure and take some insights about the attraction that some product produce to the customer. But can we somehow measure the emotions that are created when they are seeing this product, and how we can improve, for example, the advertisement process in order to be more attractive?
The answer is we can track some indices that are related to some emotions with EEG sensors, with the EEG, fMRI, and GSR sensors, especially with the galvanic skin response, where we get the intensity of some emotion, but we don't know what emotion it is. But with eye tracking, I would say it's not very good to understand the emotions. Another way to extract emotions would be with surveys and with those metrics, but those are always unreliable because people could lie, and the other thing is that emotions are a very dynamic type of signal, let's say. So arousal or valence about a product could change over time, and you only measure it when you measure it. So even if you ask from a questionnaire and you ask, like, you cannot record it all the time. And with neuromarketing sensors, you have these real-time measurements, but you don't have this. It's not very easy to distinguish between different emotions. So even if you combine both worlds, it's still very hard. It's not easy to extract emotions. But in general, yes, you can infer that. You can infer from the context what type of emotions were created. So if you have an ad, you can track how successful it was. You also know what emotions are related to this specific ad, what type of emotions you were trying to induce. So if you designed an advertisement that wants to project fear, like, or disappointment, anger in the message, and you want to, and then you measure that it was successful, then you know that possibly it was related to the participants as well. So indirectly, you can measure what emotions it were.
Yes, nice. And actually, it could be maybe work together with other technologies and other in order to boost this process. If we have any question in the chat, you can write it, and I can transfer it, of course, to the speaker. And
because you talked previously about the surveys and the reviews, do you believe that these reviews and surveys, can be replaced from these, let's say, not only EEG signals or somehow the eye tracking? Like, this guy looked a lot of this t-shirt, so probably the review is good, probably, I don't know. Somehow to have more not so biased reviews, to use or to acquire some information from those EEG signals or the patterns we get from.
Okay, so yes, in essence, this is a very challenging part because in whatever experiment you are designing in academic settings, if you recruit, let's say, your coworkers or your friends, and calculating the internal biases of your research, because you have a hypothesis, right? So the normal human thing is you try to confirm your hypothesis or reject it, depends on your objective. So we have the researcher bias, we also have the participant biases, and all those biases cannot be very easily controlled. There are procedures, of course, to mitigate those issues. So if you use a standardized questionnaires that were designed where it was shown that those effects are mitigated, or if you use some tools that are, I don't know if you are familiar with Likert scales, which are typically used in marketing experiments. So Likert scales are prone to such biases and are not very good for granularity. And now metrics that are more related to numbers between 0 and 10 or minus 10 to 10 are preferred over Likert scales. Other ways to mitigate report bias, well, you also, it's also in the recruitment phase. So the difficult part to balance is how do you get this participant informed consent, and you described exactly what the experiment is like and what exactly is expected from him without revealing the key insights of the experiment to create a further bias. So this is another challenge. And but those challenges are faced every day in marketing research, and the best practices have been let's say, created and followed. And intuitively, if a researcher is familiar with those biases, they are also equipped to design the experiments in a ways that those biases are not a big part of the research, let's say.
Okay. Also something more. If this knowledge is used from the big companies in the future, and they finally produce the products, create products that the consumer wants to buy more, or they find a way to produce them, how the smaller companies that they cannot afford, or they are not so competitive, can go into this process and be more competitive, and they can't.
You touch an aspect that is very, and there's not much small companies can do when times go well. The advantage of small companies is that they are faster in adapting to new conditions. So if they have some insights somehow, let's say based on their academic research in the neuromarketing, and then they transition into making a company that's trying to make use of these results, then the small company can gain an advantage. But if you see it the other way around, a small company cannot align, refocus their product based on neuromarketing insights because they cannot afford to do neuromarketing experiments, while the big companies can afford them. But I can put another dimension here and say, is a neuromarketing insight are neuromarketing insights that insightful, or are they too biased yet? So up to date, there are some companies that produce good results, and they say that they are very useful and transformative for businesses. And but I don't know what their customers are. If they are more big companies or smaller companies, and the prices will evolve eventually to which one needs them more, because a big company intuitively doesn't need to change anything if they are successful already. So let's say Amazon. Amazon, they have a very nice product, and they are the leader in. So why change? While a smaller company that wants to compete with Amazon, those are more. So the neuromarketing company would, in essence, be targeting the small companies, so they will adjust their price points to. So everything is possible.
But I assume that the cost for small companies maybe is unaffordable. I don't know, because as you said, there is the most impact that this science can do, I think.
Yeah, and of course the prices for academic research are different from price from business research, right? So in academic research, neuromarketing is expensive, yes. But I don't know if it is the same with a business. And it depends on what type of insights you want. If let's say some insights are cheap, like using cookie analysis, for instance, where you have the data, then it's probably going to be cheap. But I mean, you cannot ask for the company to put real electrodes in their heads, and it's too complicated and expensive, I think, for a small company.
Another question that I had is about, let's get back again the tracking. So, can we use, for example, generative AI in combination with AI tracking? For example, when we see that the customer, for some reason, lose the attention, then use some generative images or dynamically adapt the UI or something like that in order to get back its attention. It's something possible. It's something that we can see it in the future.
To some extent, it's already here. I mean, it's done usually with recommendation systems. They are designed to maximize user attention anyway, and algorithms, recommendation algorithms for proposing you new content on social media or in video sharing platform is optimized using attention metrics, and those attention metrics are not extracted from eye tracking, of course, but they are extracted from relevant variables like view times of consumers. So I would say that we are already there, and but it's an active research area anyway, and it's useful to have those measures not only for product design, but also for education, or for especially for education, like when I was presenting the EEG slides earlier, I saw that the attention span was lowering. I could see that, but in some cases, there's not much you can do, like you cannot change the slides dynamically, but in an AI system, you can do that. And it's, I think it can be transformative to the education domain, because there are no, even there are some generative tools already that create new content based on text or presentations, and in the future we're going to be seeing a lot more of that, and even on the fly adaptation of content.
Thanks a lot. Yes, because I am someone that I really love the generative AI. So I would like to see that in action, and it's very interesting field. Do we have any other question for our speaker?
Yeah, okay. If not, so we can conclude the
Okay,
session. Yes.
yeah. We can conclude the session. Again, I would like to thank